Coming up next from the Grassy Knoll, a terrifying look into the Orwellian world of brainwashing, disinformation, and ultimately control over you.
This program contains the truth and is void where prohibited, taxed, or otherwise restricted by law.
Welcome to another segment of the Grassy Knoll, and this is being recorded on January 17th 18th, that's right, for playing the 19th.
18th.
Yeah.
That 666 day.
See, I just ruined my consecutive getting the date right thing. I've had a 2006 and, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, you're hearing it on Friday, January 19th, and that's why you're listening. But we have with us Derek and Sharon Gilbert. They are the forces behind peeringintodarkness.com, PID Radio. We haven't talked to one another, at least officially on air, for about, 2 years or so, maybe even longer. So thanks, folks, for coming back. And I know things are a little bit hairy for you out there in many, many ways. Was that ice storm lived up to the billing that we heard down here in Florida and elsewhere on Network News?
Oh, yeah, and then some. Now, not particularly in our area. There are other areas of Missouri that got hit far worse than we did, but believe me, we are still socked in. Okay.
Yeah, the federal disaster area comes right up to the county in which we're living, just to the west and south and then east. All of those counties are involved. In fact, I'm talking with members, representatives from FEMA tonight to talk about what they're going to do to help Missourians in need. 2 ice storms in 30 days.
Yeah, and I just read something, too, where I guess it was in the New York Times today, where, I don't know if this is like a foreshadowing, giving everybody a heads up, but they were talking about perhaps not having enough cash for the disaster funds. So that'll be interesting to see. Yeah, so that was...
That is very interesting, given the news articles that have been out lately about the misspending and the very disappearance of funds down in Katrina.
Yes. And also they have chronicled the scamming that took place in Florida when we got hit by Charlie and Floyd. We got hit by 4 that year, but one went up into the Panhandle, but South Florida got hit twice. And then we also had problems up here in Pasco County, and people were just getting $70 to completely, fix roofs and everything. And they're like, what happened here? What went wrong, But a lot of that seems to be doled out in places that were favorable voting-wise to a certain administration.
That's not a big surprise at all.
Yep. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens with you folks. And again, when we hit tornado season and also hurricane season again, what the reality is going to be as far as what's there for folks. So, one other thing, too. I don't know if you've come to this conclusion, and it's frightening for you, I'm sure, but that there is a cross-section of people who seem to listen to both your show and mine.
I've noticed that. Actually, I think we share quite a number of listeners.
I apologize for that.
I think it's great.
I do, too. But I'm always laughing because I was saying, we were all characters in the Peanut strip, cartoon strip. You got, you'd be like Schroeder and Lucy maybe, and I would be Pigpen. So, the evil side of your listeners come over here once in a while. All right, now, getting down to the good stuff, a lot of things have transpired, and I've talked to Derek about them in particular. And one thing that struck me about all the ideas that he threw at me was this thing about some kind of curious statements, idioms, whatever, that some of our politicians are using. And of note was something, and this gets played with every so often. Does anybody want to speak to what Pelosi pulled off the other day?
Well, Derek, you're the one that really... I heard her say it, and then I mentioned it to Derek, and he followed up with some research.
Well, and I have to credit Sharon, because she's usually the one who will notice things like this. I just happened to have a couple extra minutes at the office one day, and Sharon had mentioned that she heard Nancy Pelosi reference the phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum in her first speech as Speaker of the House.
Speech, yeah.
And I thought, okay, what do we really know about Novus Ordo Seclorum? It's one of those phrases that gets tossed about by conspiracy theorists. Oh, it means new secular order. They're trying to do away with God. Well, that's not quite what it means. And when you do some research into it, you find that it's taken from a poem by Virgil, the Roman poet Virgil.
Right.
1st century B.C. The English translations, and there are different ways of translating the phrases, but the phrase from which Novus Ordo Seclorum is inspired, it's not lifted word for word, translates this way. Come are those last days that the Sibyl sang, the ages' mighty march begins anew. Okay, like the new order of the ages. Now come the Virgin, Saturn reigns again. Saturn reigns again. Now from high heaven descends a wondrous race. Translated alternatively, the majestic roll of circling centuries begins anew. Justice returns old Saturn's reign with a new breed of men sent down from heaven. Now, Saturn, if you do any research at all, you find that he's just a repackaging of the ancient Sumerian god Enki, who is pretty clear is Satan. Mm-hmm. Saturn's reign begins anew with a new breed of men sent down from heaven.
And I think cycling of the ages, I think most of our listeners are going to understand what that refers to. And, of course, that's precession, which causes this sort of clock-like movement around the heavens, around the Milky Way. And so we are in the time now where if you've read anything by... I can't think of his name.
You need a noun, don't you?
I do need a noun. Thank you very much. I need a proper noun. Wrote the wonderful study of the Mars and connected everything.
David Flynn.
He has, and along with, we've all read about the Mayan prophecies. What I'm talking about is a point where you get back to starting point again, the beginning of the next age, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
New Agers have been talking about it for a long time, that we were going to leave one age, I think the age of Capricorn, and go into Aquarius. And the dawning of the age of Aquarius was really big when I was in high school. The big signs from hair. Well, right now, Sagittarius is rising out of the mouth of Leviathan. Leviathan being the great serpentine shape in the Milky Way that we can see surrounding us. Mm-hmm. And so that has historically been considered the beginning of the next age, so to speak. So that I think that's what Virgil was talking about when he was talking about the cycling of the ages. Mm-hmm.
And he refers to this beginning, a golden dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, who did that?
This is one of the translations of Virgil. I mean, as you continue now.
Oh, really?
Now from high heaven descends a wondrous race. Thou art the newborn babe who first shall end that age of iron, bid a golden dawn.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is. So, and again, there are different translations, English translations. So, but it's pretty clear that there's if not a direct correlation between some of the inspirations of some of the secret societies of the last 100 years or so. There's, at the very least, a very, very strange coincidence.
Mm-hmm. Now, going back to something... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Viz.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Well, going to Bush's most recent speech, he at the very end talks about the author of liberty. So I wanted to find out what he meant by that. My author of liberty was all caps, because I got the text of the speech from the White House's page. And I found that in his second inaugural speech, he said toward the end, when our founders declared a new order of the ages, when soldiers died in wave upon wave for a union based on liberty, when citizens marched in peaceful outrage under the banner of freedom now, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled. History has an ebb and flow of justice, but history also has a visible direction set by liberty and, another capital, the author of liberty. In the last stanza of the song we all know, America, we find our father's God to be author of liberty. To thee we sing. I find nowhere in Scripture that God is called the author of liberty.
No.
No, and I'm hearing this for the first time, thinking of all the times we sang that song. And was that in the...
There are a lot of things in that song that are very, very creepy. This whole notion of brotherhood of men.
Okay.
That's in there.
All right.
That's very similar to the last movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which is based on a Gnostic poem by Goethe.
Well, I'm listening to all this, and of course some of these are revelations to me, but now it just starts to confirm more and more of, I should say, a suspicion that I've had, that we'll talk about later, about how all these things that we hold as symbolic to what we think is a very, even beyond benign, a very good thing. Yes, right. And in fact, it was just laced with occultism.
Mm-hmm.
And in that famous first verse, which most of us, that's the only one we sang, My Country 'Tis of Thee.
Mm-hmm.
Author of Liberty, is it in that first verse?
It's in the last stanza.
Okay. All right, so it's not, is it one that because I can't ever remember mouthing those words. So I'm wondering
I don't think we very often. I think at most we sing two.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there are 4 stanzas to it.
All right. That makes, beautiful.
Yeah, the lyrics are online, actually. I love the Internet, and I hope that the day doesn't come when we're denied access to it. Certainly, I think it may be, at the very least, splintered. But right now, you can find lyrics to just about anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, exactly. But I mean, that you found that's very interesting, because obviously that song's been with us for over a century, right? I mean.
Oh, every school child learns that.
Now that also goes along with the epiphany I had because of a gentleman that actually is a lawyer in Tampa, Rex Curry, who has a website that just completely tears apart the Pledge of Allegiance, and he's really heavy on what he calls the public fool system.
Well, that Pledge of Allegiance actually, I think I know where you're going with that. Its origins in the 19th century and its revival, going back to actually Nazism.
Oh yeah, it's statism to the max.
Mm-hmm.
The Bellamy that wrote that was a flaming socialist.
Yeah, the original, the way to pledge the allegiance was to have the Nazi salute, as you said it.
Right, Nazi Roman, everybody knows it, the extended arm, which all of a sudden disappeared after everybody witnessed what was going on in Germany.
Well, disappeared everywhere except in Lebanon for Hezbollah and the Palestinian territories for Fatah and Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
All right, they've employed that.
Do a Google search for Nazi salute and then Fatah, Nazi salute Hamas, Nazi salute Hezbollah, and you will find all of these guys dressed in their militant uniforms with their respective flags, all doing the salute. There's no corresponding gesture in Arabic or in Islam. No, but Arab culture or Islam. And it's a direct result of the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood was cultivated and protected first by the SS and then after World War II by MI6 and the CIA.
Don't tell me you were going to say the Dave Emery word, milieu.
No, but I have to credit Dave Emery for pointing that out, and John Lompus, who's done yeoman's work in researching this and documenting the connections.
Also, there's a very interesting website that I'll just throw it out. I don't think many people know about it. It's called blackraiser.com. And the word razor is the verb R-A-I-S-E-R. Blackraiser.com. I believe I have that right. But I hit that for some strange reason, and they have done a pretty decent academic job of chronicling a certain affinity between, I guess, Islam as based in Turkey and Germany around a character by the name of Sabetendorf. Does that ring a bell at all?
No.
No, he apparently made sojourns into Turkey, got involved with, a Muslim atmosphere or whatever, and then came back to Germany. And so what that explains is a good deal of what's behind the German mysticism. And also, interestingly, and this I believe was before World War I, how this axis grew. And you really think back to it. Why did Germany partner with Turkey? Mm-hmm. I mean, we would expect Italy or something like that, and of course there were different players during World War I. But now that makes it a little clearer why Germany would partner with Turkey as their own allies.
Oh yeah, well I've read theories that are there's some documentation to back it up, but theories that the reason the Ottoman Empire essentially gave in and said, okay, you may, take these territories and we'll just sort of bow out for now, was because they did strike a deal with Germany.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, I'm looking for it now just to see if I can hit it on the run. Germany was not at all oppressive, I don't believe, to the Middle Eastern states. I think they were probably, if you can, and of course this is a horrible way to say it, but probably one of the more benign occupiers down in the Middle East prior to World War I, especially with infrastructure and the railroad. So I think there was a little, obviously, affinity taking place, and of course it came to be. But you know what? It makes me also think when you talk about the Roman salute being used by certain Palestinian militant groups, that's also almost another smack in the face, I would say, probably to the Jews living in Israel. You know what I mean?
Oh, it has to be terrifying to see them doing that.
Yeah. So that kind of makes sense why it would, of all kinds of signs of solidarity, that they might use that one.
Well, Angela Merkel, of course, is the president of the EU right now. And she's using that office to try very hard to forge, I almost said force, forge a consensus on the Constitution. And strangely enough, if the rumors are true, she's having the maps of Germany redrawn.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I've read. I haven't been able to find a whole lot of corroboration. I found a cartography site where it showed the new map of Western Europe, and Germany was really big.
Yeah, right in the middle, and this greater entity called Mittel Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Middle Europe, with Germany right smack in the center.
You've been talking.
What's interesting is we look at these connections, though. This Nazi salute, this Roman salute that was first introduced to the U.S. as part of our Pledge of Allegiance, which was used, of course, in Nazi Germany, and then spread through the Middle East, where it is used to this day. And then we go back and look at the spirit behind it, and we see the Roman poet Virgil with his, now comes this new golden dawn heralding the return of Saturn's reign, Satan's reign, with a new breed of men from the heavens. And that referenced by American politicians. George Bush, in his second inaugural address, with the passage that Sharon read, referring back to My Country 'Tis of Thee. Nancy Pelosi, perhaps signaling that she's one of the insiders, Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order of the ages. We have to say, as we look at the broader picture, the spiritual war that takes place on the global chessboard, that these can't be coincidences, that they must be connected in some way, that we're seeing the spirit that has been trying to destroy God's chosen people, the Jews, for 4,000 years now, is still at work. And what's frightening is that when you look at the work that Dave Emery has done, and the other research by guys like John Loftus, and you see that there are people on the inside in the U.S., men with strong connections to radical Islam, like, for example, Grover Norquist, and the political clout that he wields within the Republican Party. And you look at the fact that the radical Islamic, parent group, if you will, the Muslim Brotherhood, which spawned Hamas and Fatah and Al-Qaeda, was sheltered by the SS and then MI6 and CIA, all of the Anglo-Saxon countries. This spirit, this the spirit that's directly opposed to God's chosen people, working on both sides of this coming showdown between the U.S. and Iran, between the West and radical Islam, playing both sides against the middle.
Yeah. I have a theory about that, and I want to share something with along those lines, but I want you to know that I already sent you an email from that with the blackracer.com website. If you scroll down a little bit above all the top garbage, they start first a 4-part series. And about this cat Sabetendorf was an initiate of the Eastern Mysteries in Turkey as well as of Freemasonry. Just before World War I, he made several trips to the Near East. During the Balkan War of 1912-13, he directed the Turkish Red Crescent and was named the Master of the Order of the Rose Garland. Now it goes up and it says he went back to Germany, founded the notorious right-wing Thule Society, and in 1918 purchased a weekly Munich newspaper, which he transformed into an anti-Semitic scandal sheet. So this guy's kind of like slipped from the pages of history, if you will. But if you take a look, that'll make more sense out of everything also about which we're speaking. Also, with this bit about playing the old Crusade card about the West and Christendom versus the Ottomans or Islam. Here's one of the things that is frightening to me, and I'm wondering if it isn't going to be played out. Throughout history, we know that there have been what we would call a scourger raised up to take care of a certain, quote, problem. Napoleon kicked booty across Europe, and you can believe whatever you want to as to who was behind it. In many cases, it's believed that the Vatican raised that up to punish some of the monarchs who allowed their nations to go either Protestant or basically weren't paying their tribute. Of course, after Napoleon, for whatever purposes, did what he did, obviously his army was abandoned and the scourger was indeed scourged. Hitler, I think of, obviously taking care of the Jewish problem as well as other things, and what happened to his army. And both, it's interesting too, because both those armies, Napoleon's and Hitler's, failed in their penetration into Russia. It's almost like nobody touches Russia until we tell you to, and I'm wondering if that isn't going to be the favored nation in time to come, despite what they're doing with China. Thirdly, here's what's worrying me. Are we in fact, has the United States been in fact invested with the same, what we can call satanic spirit, most recently known as Nazism, and our military being misused to take care of the Arab problem? What do you think? I mean, I'm just throwing that out. Is there a possibility that we're going to see that same scenario played out, and in fact, as you might believe, that our military may be caught on that chessboard with no way out?
Well, I'll let Derek answer for himself in a minute, but I can tell you how I feel about it. I think that we are going to be drawn onto that chessboard, but I don't think that it's going to be the United States that wipes them out, because we see in the Gog-Magog war, it's primarily the Arab nations that are coming into Israel, and I can't think of what would bond them together other than the fact that they have formed a caliphate.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
All right.
I would agree with that. And one thing that we should note is that when we look at these entities, these forces that are at work on the planet, it's not just one that opposes God's people. There are many out there. If we look at the Bible and translate and the divine counsel passages that refer to God in His counsel, we look at a number of fallen B'nai Elohim, or sons of God, that are at work on the planet, at least 70.
Yeah, I would say that there are probably, you're right, at least 70, because in the Table of Nations we see that there are 70 nations, and God put a lesser God, I've heard it translated that way, B'nai Elohim, put one in charge of each of the nations after the fall of Babel. And they don't get along. They are I get emails, and I bet you do too, Viz, and I know Derek does, saying, well, you guys, you can't blame all of this on this entity. You can't say it's all Illuminati. You can't say it's all this. That's true. And I think anyone who tries to lay all the blame at the feet of the Vatican or at Freemasonry, you're looking to human sources for the blame. And ultimately, the source for all of this confusion is human beings, no matter what order they may belong to, in league with supernatural beings. And these beings in charge of these nations are given that right to rule by God.
Yeah, Deuteronomy.
For His reasons, for His purposes.
Right.
Because all things are worked together for good, according to God's plan.
Yeah, Deuteronomy 32:8 makes it clear. God divided the inheritance of the nations based on according to the number of the sons of God. And
are we talking about the sons of God?
The B'nai Elohim.
Yes.
Okay, right. We're talking about right. All right. Which ones that mated with humans?
Not necessarily. I think that there is argument to say that's a separate group.
Okay.
Because those were 200.
Yeah, and those were the ones who were imprisoned, according to Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the ones that are imprisoned in Tartarus until the final judgment. Now, we're talking about God. After the Tower of Babel, you see the nations divided up, and there are 70 listed in the Table of Nations in Genesis 10. And that is the number, according to which God, the number of the B'nai Elohim that God placed over the earth, a one-to-one correlation. And researchers like Dr. Michael Heiser have made that connection to the myths of the cultures surrounding the ancient Hebrews in the Middle East, the ancient Near East, Acadia, Sumer, Egypt, the Canaanites, and so forth. Their pantheon held that there were 70 in the pantheon that were just below the supreme god, El, in the case of the Canaanites, for example. So it's like the same story but told from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. But it does fit with other passages in the Bible. It shows God standing among his council. Psalm 82, I believe, is another one. 82. God says to the gods and basically accuses them of judging unjustly and warning them that they will die like men.
Yeah, and understand when we say that, we believe in one God. And we believe in the Trinity, first of all. But we believe that there is one God in a Trinity Godhead. And that these other beings, they're usually referred to as angels, but I think, frankly, that's too broad a term. Because angel simply means messenger, and it can refer to human beings who are sent for a specific purpose. These are referred to in Scripture as B'nai Elohim, the sons of God.
And there are many different words in Hebrew that are translated into Greek. Greek basically has one word.
They're called lesser gods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the Greek, there's only one word basically that refers to angel, but in Hebrew there are different classes: Malachim, Teraphim, Seraphim. Depending on the class. So it loses something in the translation, and I think that's partly why we, reading our English translations, have lost some of the supernatural aspects that were written into the Bible.
We get a hint of it from Paul, who tells us in Ephesians that there are powers and principalities and oh gosh, he lists them all, and they're not all coming to me right now. Those are nouns.
Rulers of the spiritual darkness.
Exactly. There's a hierarchy, and I think God's creation, the creation we cannot see with the senses we have here, is huge and extremely varied. I mean, look at the creation here on this side of things. Why would it be any less diverse over there?
Now, how does this play out when you talk about the 70 with what is yet to come?
Well, the 70 that were put, the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, who were given, not the ones who mated with women. These were simply put in charge of, and I don't even know that they were in fallen states. They may have been when they were put in charge. But essentially, I think God said to mankind, okay, you want to, this was after Nimrod, okay, you want to essentially find your own way to me. You want to listen to these voices that I'm telling you are wrong. Have at it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put them in charge of you.
All right.
And that's when the world became Satan.
And the understanding among the ancient Hebrews and Jews was that the idols followed by the nations around them, like Molech and Chemosh and Dagon and Asherah, were actual entities, not just carvings of wood and stone. They were actual entities, but Baal, but not of the same class or same order as God. God was above them all, like the Irish concept of the high king, and then having lesser kings ruling over smaller territories. Now, how does that play out into what's happening today? Well, that's where we try to, see as through a glass darkly. We see that there are similarities taking place on the world board in the way certain beliefs are infusing various government groups and various political entities around the world. The spread of Nazism after World War II, and the way the former SS, well, I say former, the way SS officers were smuggled out of the country and to infect the rest of the world, if you will, into the United States, where there were some very strong supporters of the Hitler regime prior to and even during World War II. And the fact that quite a few of those people who were active in the Nazi regime made it into the United States. How much of an influence has that had on the direction of American politics since then?
I just raised my hand here. May I? Just to simplify it from my viewpoint, and then you can go on in the political realm.
You probably boiled it down to a more concise statement.
In the Garden of Eden, God said that there would be a Redeemer who would crush the enemy's head, crush Satan's head. We think of this enemy as Satan. When those 70 angels were put in charge of 70 nations, and when I say nations, I don't know that refers to 70 countries. It's 70 groups of peoples, and we're so scattered throughout the world now. You may have an angel who's in charge of a certain group of people that are descended from this son of Noah, and those people are scattered throughout the world. But essentially, we've got the promise in the garden. These angels that know about the promise, they twist that promise to their own ends and say, I am the one who will bring that Redeemer to you. And they cast God Almighty, Jehovah God, in a dark role to make themselves look bright and shiny. And the Gnostic beliefs that grew up around those individual nations' religions have permeated throughout the world. And now we have many groups who are looking for that Redeemer to come. And they each one are looking through Gnostic vision. They're not looking necessarily for the true Son of God. They're looking for the false one. And I think what it is all of these religions are eventually going to come together and look and say, you know what? We're all looking for the same guy. Sadly, the guy they find is not Christ. He is the Antichrist.
All right. I want to pick up on something that we talked about with the Collins, and it resonates with what you're saying right now. But before we do that, I'll tell you what. I want to let everybody know that Sharon and Derek Gilbert are here from Peering into Darkness from PID Radio. Will you tell them about the website and all the resources you have there?
Well, we've got a couple of different sites. They're all tied together.
Touch them all. That's okay.
Like a suite. Yeah. Sharon edits a daily news and comment magazine, WatcherMagazine.com, which has got some wonderful contributors now. Tom Horn contributing a series of articles, which is right in line with what we're talking about, called The Rise of Angelic Rule. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Marvin talking about the way our military is being misused.
Exactly.
And based on his experiences in Vietnam, he's got a lot of credibility. He knows whereof he speaks. Investigator Doug Hagman, the director of the Northeast Intelligence Network, with some inside information on security threats. And we don't believe for a moment that we are very aware that there are people out there who seek to do us harm. There is a threat from radical Islamic terror in this country. But it's not always being reported by the major media, which is ironic unless you consider that maybe there's another purpose that it's not being reported. So that's at Watcher Magazine, a lot of stories that are being underreported or glossed over by the major media. Then PID Radio, of course, which is the site where we do our daily commentary show, and then a Sunday interview program now. So daily it's a 30 minutes of commentary on the news of the day, and then a 1-hour interview on the weekend. Then there's a forum site, our own personal blogs where we, record our own thoughts, just all tied together there, either WatcherMagazine.com or PIDRadio.com. And we're working on a site now that will expand and offer more of this comprehensive dot-connecting information.
We're just in the formative stages of that. It's going to be a premium site where you literally have to subscribe, but the subscription prices, we're going to keep it as low as we possibly can. And it's going to be really, a think tank connecting the dots, as Derek said. In fact, this site is called Connecting the Dots. A place where you can go, and we're praying that you will find answers to what appears to be chaos, when in fact it's really not. And there's a wonderful analogy that I've heard many times, and I bet Viz you've heard it too, is that if you take a look at a Persian rug from underneath, it looks like just a bunch of strings. But if you look at the other side, it's a beautiful picture. We're seeing the underside right now. And it's really easy to pick up a thread or all the red threads and say, well, this is the connecting thing. Or no, someone else saying, no, it's all these yellow threads. And, argue over what it is, and then detractors coming along and saying, look, these are just threads. They're not connected. But God sees all the connections from the other side. And our prayer is that we can start to connect just a few of these things together and start to make sense of it.
All right. Let me share something with you. Have you ever heard of a book called Pawns in the Game?
No.
By William Guy Carr. He was a veteran of the Canadian Navy. And he wrote a book, and that's the title, and it came out around 1958. But there's a little clip I just wanted to read to you, a little excerpt rather. And to me, I think this guy gets it. Obviously, he's a military man. He also is a Christian. He said, it was 1950 before I penetrated the secret that the wars and revolutions which scourge our lives and the chaotic conditions that prevail are nothing more or less than the effects of the continuing Luciferian conspiracy. It started in that part of the universe we call heaven when Lucifer challenged the right of God to exercise supreme authority. And he goes on from there. But I think that's what we're facing when we look at what is taking place now. And you know that in the movement on the side of the street that we have set up shop, that there are a lot of people, they all get it about the New World Order, every single one of them. But many of them don't want to look at it in terms of the spiritual sense and of biblical prophecy. I guess it's kind of a loaded question, but do you not see, as we look at events today and where they're headed, that it bears out pretty well with what is foretold in Scripture?
Oh, I think that's what we talk about all the time.
Right.
And that's the unifying factor. If you want the unified field theory of conspiracy theory, it's that it's all based in heaven.
Yes. But and here's the other thing, and it's also come to me now. And I'm like I said, you can disagree if you wish, but it's good to talk about this. I see everybody saying, and some other show hosts say we got the NWO's on the run and we can beat this and and I'm like, no, we're not going to beat this. I mean, just like you said before, and as we see throughout Scripture, I mean, when entities and characters like Nebuchadnezzar and Pharaoh are raised up, they're raised up to sharpen us, to wrought some kind of, I guess you want to call it either a spiritual strengthening and also an opportunity to show others to Christ. And so that's what I look at now in terms of, folks, this is, if you don't understand what's coming down the track, why don't you think about what's in Scripture, and why don't you take a look through that prism, bad choice of words, at what is going on? Yeah, my crystal. So how do you feel about that? I mean, I don't see, if it's ordained by the Lord, He says it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Well, I'll tell you what really helped me to realize what was going on, and really convinced me that there are forces at work guiding history and trying to manipulate history. I taught a class to Sunday school some years ago on the Christian foundations of the country, and I focused pretty much on the Massachusetts Bay Colony and what those people went through in order to get here. And it suddenly struck me. The moment in time at which Jesus appeared on the world scene was at the peak of the power of the Roman Empire, where you could pretty much travel from one end of the civilized world to the other.
Right.
And in fact, there's evidence now that during the Roman period, first century, there were sailors that were traveling to North and South America. Okay, as well as to Persia and India, China, and beyond. You could put a message in play at that point in history and have it travel pretty much from one end of the world and the other. Not before the peak of the Roman Empire, and shortly thereafter, things began to fragment. And but we do have evidence, archaeological evidence, that the gospel message did reach China as early as the end of the first century A.D. Now, at what point in history did the Puritans, the Pilgrims, leave England and sail for the New World. At that point in time, at which transoceanic travel became fairly reliable, not comfortable. I mean, you had 120 people packed into a space the size of a volleyball court right over the bilge for several weeks. But still, it was. If they had tried any earlier, they probably wouldn't have made it, because it wasn't until about the early 17th century that you could cross the ocean reliably. And it suddenly dawned on me at that point. And you look at the way the history of the Christian church progressed. First 3 centuries, tried to crush it from without, couldn't do it. Suddenly it was legalized, and it began to rot from the inside out. And once it almost destroyed the Christian church. Early 17th century, suddenly transoceanic travel becomes reliable enough to take a gamble. This group of 122 souls travels across the ocean, blown off course outside the legal jurisdiction of the King of England, so that they were no longer separate, under the king's laws, and set up their own system of government based on, as close as they could follow, the principles laid down by the first century church.
All right, divine law.
Right. Exactly. So that's when I said, you know what, this just can't be a coincidence. I mean, the timing of this was just too perfect to be coincidence.
History is full of things like that. Invasions that were stopped because someone, fell off a horse, and orders were intercepted. God is in control. No matter how chaotic these 70 B'nai Elohim leaders want to make this world, no matter how chaotic Luciferians want to make this world, so they can, bring to order that chaos for their own glory and power. God is in control. He has given temporary reign to the enemy. Temporary. And to your question, will the New World Order prevail? I think they will for a short time, but not for very long.
I agree.
Unless anyone think that I was, going to make the case that America is and always has been a Christian nation, and therefore we are right. That brings us back full circle to what we started with, the speeches by President Bush and Nancy Pelosi. As soon as this country was officially independent and a country, what happened? Well, the very first, the official seal incorporates this phrase drawn from the poem Virgil, welcoming in Saturn's reign with a new breed of men descended from heaven.
Well, you're absolutely right. And that let's see, we've got about 19 minutes left. Okay, because this is really a deep and rich topic, and it's one that I've looked at now from a different side of the pole, in the sense that, right from the get-go, we are loaded with trappings of occultism that goes beyond Masonry into, I would say, right to the very beginning, and that would be Mystery Babylon religions, so the Kabbalah and such. And of course, and Pike said just as much in that book that he wrote, Morals and Dogma, in 1878. But even going back before that now, with what kind of part that Bacon might have played, given the fact that he was a Rosicrucian. It looked like there were Rosicrucians amongst the first English immigrants that came over to, I guess, the Tidewater section of Virginia and other places. And now I'm starting to think that the joke has always been on us, because this nation was fatted and taken very good care of, but might it have been raised up. Despite having, yes, I would say a Christian majority population, that did not mean necessarily that all the framers were, or the shakers and movers were. And that we have been raised up to perform a certain task. And, of course, this goes back to what I'm saying, about what's happening in the Middle East. But, I mean, again, the 13 states really want to operate by themselves. So what happens is when you create the United States, even though it looks like a grand thing, in fact, it's the first attempt at federation. It's almost like a little one world order. And that we might have been the experiment that we now see has gone to full fruition. So that's a lot of stuff to deal with. But again, what is the possibility that we were created and raised for a nefarious purpose?
Oh, I think totally. But God allowed that, and continues to allow it for His reasons. If you take a look at our early founding, we were founded in some ways to be the new Atlantis.
Exactly right. Exactly.
So if you're talking about bacon, boy, that's a fantastic study, getting in there. And I've recently been reading about Mithras and Rosicrucianism, Zoroastrianism, and all of that kind of stuff. And as I've said on our show many times, don't delve in there unless you are a rock-solid Christian. These are very compelling Gnostic beliefs that once you get in there can just draw you under like an undertow, a deadly current. You have to really go in, crate up, and know your Bible. Know what's real before you study what's fake. But, yeah, I think that we were raised up for those reasons as an experiment, but also as a continuation of Rome.
Sharon, and no doubt, I mean, everything that happens is ordained by the Lord. I mean, and that's a given. I mean, at least from where I'm coming from as well. But what I think people have to do, and again, like I said, if this isn't an opportunity for many to come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, my point is that yes, this is ordained to happen, and it must have a purpose. I don't think the Lord, and certainly by Christ's own words, he was all concerned with governments. He knew that was a human construct, and he wanted really no part of it. He operated within it and outside of it at the same time. And I think Americans must understand, and this is where it really gets critical, that what they're following is a path of statism and not of true Christian dogma, if you will. And this gets into the whole idea of, do we take up arms, the brethren, to go ahead and defend Jerusalem, when obviously in Revelation the Lord will take care of that, and he comes down with obviously legions of angels, and never does he ask the brethren to pick up arms to slay another. So you've got this whole Robertson idea of we've got to go in and fight for Israel, which I think is ascriptural. So my point to you then, Sharon, is this. Yes, it is ordained by God. We cannot look at this from a geopolitical aspect. We have to look at it from a spiritual aspect. And I think a lot of non-Christians and even some supposed evangelicals are being sucked into the statist mentality. And so go have at it.
Well, I think that you're right in that what we do in Israel isn't necessarily God's command. He does not tell us to go in and shed blood simply because it's politically expedient. I don't for a minute think that governments are secular. I think that they're a form of religion. And we just simply aren't aware of it as we're growing up. But I do believe that there are times when God uses these governments to his own ends. And an example of that is Nebuchadnezzar. Was it Nebuchadnezzar who was, or was it Darius? Who was it that allowed the rebuilding of the temple?
Darius.
Yeah, and there are times when he protects his people, the church in Israel, through human government. But for the most part, no, human government is not a divine institution at all.
No, and I think you're right, it isn't secular, but my point is now I think all nations' governments have gone corrupt, and they are in tow to Satan. And I think the people of all nations have to realize that the governments have never really, really reflected what we want. And especially now, this is a time when governments, because of terrorism, which they've induced, is forcing people to make a choice, and most of them are saying, well, I'll rely on the state as nurturer, provider, and protector.
Right.
And what's really frightening about this, Viz, is that born-again Christians, I think, are used by at least our government here to promote patriotism to the extent of being blindly supportive of whatever our government says it wants to do.
Right.
And, David Duncan has a wonderful theory that we're being set up as patsies because we do blindly follow. We as a group blindly follow what the government wants to do. And so when the government is wrong, the non-Christians will look at the Christians and say, you know what, you and Bush, you're the ones that got us in this mess. Get them.
Yep.
Yeah. Set up for a fall. And not to hijack the conversation, but just to, again, tie it back to what you were saying, that, we've been raised up as a nation, perhaps from nearly the very beginning. Sharon did some study on the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life and how it ties into, various mystery religions. And we've all seen the pictures or the map of Washington, D.C. with the Masonic symbols overlaid onto it as evidence of the Masonic influence on the founding of the country. But Sharon found that when she overlaid the Kabbalah Tree of Life, over Washington, D.C. The fit is much better than it is even with the Masonic symbols. And maybe they're both there. But
I think there may be a lot of symbols there. But the fit with the Tree of Life is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is, and I thank you for sending that graphic along. And I also found I had an image of that very same thing, even more replete, I think, with... and I'm going to ship it to you and take a look. This isn't a yeah, but statement. It's just that it gets a little more replete in describing a lot of the levels there. And I'd like you to take a look at it if you would.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Well, again, and this is why I said to Derek at times, it's like why in the world do we embrace clearly occult images? I mean, now you talked about the extension of Saturn. I mean, now you take a look at the Statue of Liberty and the whole notion of Columbia. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, I have Freeman on to talk about Columbia, but I don't know. As being young, did you ever once ask yourself, what's Columbia? I mean, what the heck is Columbia?
No, you don't ask. I always assumed it had to do with Columbus. You know, when I was a kid.
But right, I mean,
District of Columbia. Okay, that has to do with Columbus.
But then you take a look at it. I guess it's an association with, I guess, that lady with her armpit raised toward Jersey called the Statue of Liberty. And the whole idea of that being Columbia, which looks like it's a send-down from the Egyptian sun god worship, and that she, in fact, is a manifestation of Isis.
Yes, very much so. And Semiramis.
Yes, exactly. So now you look at all these things, and it's like all over the place, and then you wonder, okay, what is the deal, guys? Now, we had a gentleman on that goes by the name of the Informer who lives in North Carolina and just wants a little anonymity because he's had his battles with the government for so long now, and he's a little long in the tooth. He would just like a little distance between himself and them, and we call him the Informer, and he has done an awful lot of work, a painstaking amount of work, about the foundation of the country and the lie that it was. And you can find his information on atgpress.com, The Informer. And one of the things I had asked him once, because I was just like blown away about, for instance, there's a certain mindset that if they had stuck with the Articles of Confederation and let the states be a little bit more independent, you know, things would have been better, but instead a lot of them caved in and went for the Constitution and such, and were unhappy. And I said to him, well, why did everybody vote for it then if there were people, I think, like Patrick Henry that was against it? And he looked at me, he didn't look at me, but he said to me, they're all lawyers. And I'm like, I don't mean to make more of it than it is, but clearly there was an elite caste system in the United States. You can't say there wasn't. And the Constitution, without the Bill of Rights, might be a bit of an elitist document. And if the lawyers were the ones responsible, that is not necessarily a secret society. There is a somewhat semi-secret societal element to it. But the lawyers, and I'll tell you what, do you remember reading what Christ says about the lawyers?
Well, he's not very fond of them.
Oh, no, yeah.
Whited sepulchres, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's a little lower than brood of vipers, but, yeah. And he said so, it was something interesting, and I'm paraphrasing it now, but that he would say that you're the keepers of the knowledge. It's that they didn't want to share something that they, they held back, hence this little secret element to them, and the whole idea of inner courts and middle courts and stuff, but by that, yeah.
Well, more than that, I would say that by referring to them as whited sepulchres, you could even make a stretch and say he's referring to skull and bones.
And what was that phrase that you found that Jesus said, which...
The stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. I have puzzled over that for years, and it hit me one day. What if he's talking about Freemasonry?
And at that time, it all really comes down to it comes down to Satan. So it goes back as far as, and yes, and in that...
And it all goes back, way back. It goes back to the garden, if not before, because if Satan was there, if Lucifer was in the garden tempting Eve, then at that point Satan had chosen to disobey God. So either he fell at that point or he had fallen previously to that.
This is the last thing I'll throw out because we will run out of time. I do everything in hour increments, and obviously that's the way it is. But this is one of those cases where, I wish I could kick the door down on the hour thing. And, of course, in the old days, we were on longer on the AM station. We were on at times at 2 and 3 hours. But
no problem. We understand.
Here's what I'm thinking. And, again, you have last word, and then we got to go. But I think sometimes, looking back at the choice that was made in the garden, the choice was for the knowledge of good and evil, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, knowledge and its extension, I think, is what has become technology, if you will. And again, through technology, as we see it in all fields, it almost tries to be as God, to the point of creating life, and hybrids. What do you think about the fact that when flesh chose knowledge, if you will, that is when the die was cast, and that what we're seeing today is perhaps, the real high point just becoming before the Big Bang in the world today?
I'll say mine, and then you can have the last word, Derek. It's so funny because we just saw a Doctor Who episode.
Right.
That I think I'm going to write an article about, because information, knowledge, was what created the society. The whole society was built around information, and they thought it was coming from the satellite news service. And they all lived for it. That's what drove them. Everybody was chipped, and they were able to get it anytime they wanted, and they instantly knew what the stories were because of their chips.
That was in Doctor Who?
It was in Doctor Who.
Wow.
And Doctor Who discovers that it is not legitimate news. It is all coming from one alien being who has created all of this knowledge to use humanity for his own physical ends.
Okay.
Great big metaphor.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I looked at Derek and I said, we thirst for knowledge. We thirst for information. And by getting 24/7, 365 cable, and now we can get it on our phones and on our handhelds, and it's everywhere. It's in huge, in Times Square, it's on huge screens that everybody can watch it. That's what everybody's getting addicted to.
Mm-hmm.
We want to know more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, knowledge versus wisdom.
Right.
And this morning I was driving to work and listening to one of the hosts on our station, and he was playing a parody ad from the Federation of Condescending Scientists. You, with your belief in a superior being, you're so cute. We've proven there is no God until we decide there is one. And then we'll tell you, because it'll be us.
That's right.
And that, I thought, was, again, another perfect metaphor for the way we've become in this society, valuing information, knowledge, over wisdom, which, as the Bible tells us, the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord.
Right, which has been vacated for the pursuit of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't it interesting, too, that in that whole story about Faust, Dr. Faustus, or Faust, however you want to cut it, one of the things was the bet that, I think I have this right, it's been a long time since reading Goethe or Marlowe, that the bet was, I think, that the devil said to Faust, if I give you unlimited resources, you'll come to a point that you won't wish to stay at. And, of course, the bet was, no, I won't. And, in fact, he didn't. I think, in fact, Gretchen was lost in that whole situation. My point being is that, no, if you give unlimited resources for the pursuit of knowledge, it will never end. And hence, also, neither will you pay attention to your Creator. That sound right?
Absolutely.
All right, folks. Listen, I'm lamenting the fact that it's only an hour, but I tell you, you guys are probably happy. I know you got a tight schedule out there, especially you, Derek, and given what's been going on out there. So I appreciate you coming on, and I think it should be incumbent upon me not to let too much more time pass between the next time on. And also, folks, if you're not familiar with Derek and Sharon, you can hit the link off my homepage, and I'll get you to them. But it's peeringintodarkness.com. And just tell me, PID Radio is broadcasting on what kind of schedule right now?
We have a 30-minute podcast that we produce weeknights, and every Sunday evening there's a 1-hour interview.
All right, and they can hit that off the website, no big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can subscribe to it at iTunes, but if you go to PIDradio.com, you'll find all the information there.
All right, listen, again, thanks very much for coming on, folks, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Viz.
All right.
It's been a pleasure.
God bless you all. Bye-bye now.
This program is produced by Vyzygoth Incorporated. Any rebroadcast or use of this program without the express consent of Vyzygoth Incorporated is strictly encouraged. I'm Phil McCracken, the voice behind the voice, and thank you for listening.
Please fasten your seatbelt.